Well, I appreciate you coming out on behalf of the Kansas City AI Club. My name is Chris, if we haven't met, Chris Kovac. I'm one of the co-founders of the AI Club. We are an informal organization. Sorry, I'll do this. We are an informal organization, informal professional organization. So we don't have memberships right now. Our goal is to create an umbrella where AI enthusiasts and professionals can come together and figure out what does this mean, how is it going to impact us, what does the future look like. So that is our mission. If you want to learn more, you can check out kansascity.ai. That's our website. Mr. William over here is Vice President of the club, and he put together that website. We're going to be adding more resources coming up, so stay tuned for that. All right, so I do want to give a huge thank you to the Zuma Credit Union, if we can give them a round of applause. They have hosted maybe a half dozen or something of our events. It's very difficult to find an event space that we can fit 100 people or even more, so we're very thankful that the Zuma Credit Union has stepped up. If you're not familiar with them, you can go to their website and learn more. But great organization, great group of people. We are very thankful. So I always ask a few questions. Who here first time AI Club, at least in Kansas City? Wow, awesome. Congratulations for joining us. It's kind of weird. But thank you, I guess is what I was trying to say. How about who's been here more than 3 times? Awesome, we got a nice split. Appreciate you coming out. I am super excited for the panel discussion, so I will introduce Hurston here shortly. But I also want to say that the Kansas City AI community is on fire. So there are communities in Minneapolis that are doing the same things. We routinely get as many people in our meetups as Boston. We're a little bit behind Dallas right now. Dallas is gigantic. But we are punching above our weight class. The Kansas City AI community with people up here, people in this room, we are really doing cool and innovative things. There's a lot of energy in the city. Other than AI, certainly, but it's a great time to be in AI in Kansas City, so I hope you can feel that enthusiasm tonight. All right. Okay, so the other thing is we've actually raised about $1,000, so we are donating every penny that you put down, the $10, to 3 different not-for-profits. We have We Code KC. Is anyone familiar with We? Yes, We Code KC. Awesome. Yes. If you're not familiar with them, check out We Code KC. And then we have the Block as well as LEC. So what we're doing here is we're donating for not-for-profits who are education-centric, because that's important, right? We want to break down barriers. We want to, provide these tools for everybody. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As a matter of fact, this year we've donated, we're going to donate $2,500 to We Code, as well as another several $100s to other organizations. So we really appreciate that. We want to say thank you to our sponsors. So we have Next Level Performers, we have MASH Metrics, Kovac AI, SEM Rush, Duda.co, and then Startland News. So we are a volunteer-based organization, so we appreciate their support. I've got some upcoming events that you don't want to miss, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to give you free tickets, so pay attention. So we have the next event, March 18th. It's going to be at Johnson County Community College. That is going to be AI, basically the intersection of AI, talent, workforce, and growth. So we're going to have an expert panel discussion. You can see more on kansascity.ai. So this is going to be a big event, March 18th. 5 to 7 p.m. at the Rainier Center. If you use my last name, Kovac, K-O, V as in Victor, A-C, you will get free tickets. So I hope that that's our way of saying thank you for showing up tonight, supporting the community, as well as, let's join the conversation and figure out where all this is going. What else do I got here? Questions? Okay, water, housekeeping. So we have water in the back room. The restrooms are out back. Feel free to get out at your convenience. So, without further ado, I am excited on behalf of the AI Club. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Hurston, for moderating this panel. So I would like to introduce Mr. Hurston Fales. And Hurston is a co-founder of Storytailor. Who here knows Storytailor? Okay, if you don't, go look them up. I think they've been one of the rock stars of this city, of this region. They're doing wonderful, wonderful things. Hurston has also been a community builder, technologist, just a renaissance person, if you will. So, Hurston, I'm going to hand it over to you and take it away. So please welcome Hurston.
Thank you. So what we're going to do right now is have the panelists introduce themselves, take about 15 seconds each, to just let you know who they are and how they're involved with AI, and then we will proceed to ask and answer questions. All right?
Hi everybody, my name is Joe Nelson. I work at Keystone. I'm the Community Engagement Manager over there, and I'm also running for Kansas City Public School Board at large. I follow AI in education primarily, but I have, I have a military background and a corporate background, so there's lots of applications.
Hello, I'm Doug O'Hulin. I work on AI in healthcare, AI policy, and governance. I'm the humanities chair for the AI Club here, and I'm looking at how AI can be used for good.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lindsay Jarrett, and I'm the Vice President of Ethical AI Services at the Center for Practical Bioethics. I'm a social scientist and a clinical researcher.
All right, good evening everyone. My name is Louis Bird. I'm the founder and chief, grateful I call myself a carrier, but it's a chief architect of responsible innovation. Some shit I made up, but it sounds good. So all that being said, we'll pass it along.
How can I follow that? Hi all, I'm Michelle Frost. I've been in software engineering for a little over 10 years. Have a master's in AI with most of my research in fairness and responsible AI. And currently I'm an AI advocate at JetBrains. We're a European-based company. I'm pretty new there. And I'm also proud to say I serve as a tech advisor to the Center for Practical Bioethics.
Yeah, sorry, we're gonna do a lot of passing the mic that way, so please be patient with us. You heard the others sounded like trash cans falling, so we want to make sure that you can actually hear the questions and the responses. Okay, so we'll hop right in. With advancements in AI, actually, hold on, let me back up. So before I get too far along, we will have questions and then we will have answers from our panelists. But we wanted to also make sure that we gave you all an opportunity in near real time to ask questions as well. So in order to do that, it will be essentially first recognized, first to ask. So the only dumb question is the one not asked. Keep that in mind. If you're sitting on a question as something is being answered, raise your hand first. Chris will kind of give you the signal and you'll be the person to ask the question for that particular segment. Cool? Everybody understand the rules? Okay, cool. All right, so with advancements in AI, what emerging trends excite you the most, and how will these trends impact us locally? Any of our panelists can answer, just let me know who wants to go first.
I guess I volunteered?
Yep.
All right. So I think again, there's lots of applications, and the beautiful part about AI is that because it touches every industry, even the ones you probably wouldn't even think about. So I think the biggest trend is the efficiencies that can be brought about in almost any application you can think of. And administratively, that's huge, especially for, think about a DMV, right? Who's ever loved their DMV experience, right? So if you're able to automate a lot of that paperwork and processing, right? Healthcare is another example, right? If you're able to take away that administrative burden, right? You're able to be more efficient and you can apply your people to other things. So I think that's the biggest trend and the most promising one, because there's really no limit to that efficiency. You just find more ways to eliminate wasted time, I think.
Yes, the thing I'm really excited about is agents, especially agents that focus on personal agents on healthcare, a personal healthcare agent, a personal education agent. Actually, in 2017, Cable Labs had $300,000 of prize money on how we live, which is healthcare, work, play, and so we won the grand prize on healthcare. and the focus was around AI and agents and what could be possible. And I see in the next 3 years that you're going to have 8 personal healthcare agents to help you be as healthy as possible. A billion people, in the next 20 years, 1.5 billion people are supposed to die. So, you know, how do we reduce avoidable deaths? How do we reduce disabilities? And then from education, how do we fix problems? So the question is what problems are you trying to solve? And can an AI co-pilot, an AI agent help you fix your problem for education? So as a companion to help you learn as best you can.
Probably something that I kind of stay in the realm of healthcare. I've spent most of my career there. But I think, most excited about just voice assist. If we could continue on that path, I think it can actually help a lot of people. I know that we have a lot of fear around that, but I think that it also can provide a lot of autonomy and help a lot of people in just doing daily tasks, getting things that they need, creating independence. So maybe it's still not a trend. I'd like it to get back on that train, but I am always excited about that type of technology growing.
I guess we're just passing the mic on.
Yeah, we're just gonna do it.
I think I'm going to piggyback off of Doug. I'm really excited about the possibility of agents. Something that we're building in-house is, I like to say, a augmented intelligence that is more of a home assistant. And we're putting a lot of care behind this technology to really make it a true assistant that goes beyond just remedial tasks, but really we're building in, or we have already built in personality. There's humor. There's all these other things. Our goal at our company is to really push for like our version of Jarvis, but for homeowners. You know, and I know that's very, you know, fantasy, but I think we're pretty close to getting, or we have the potential to get there. So, agents is something that I'm really excited about. Absolutely.
I'm always going to be last. You know, I kind of want to deviate from the question just a little for just 1 second, Kirsten. How many people know what agentic AI is or have heard of it? Okay, yeah, keep track of that. I just heard most people name that in one way or another. Another fun question that I was recently asked was, did the term agentic just appear in 2024? And that answer is no. It's actually been around since the 80s from psychology. And I think really what we're seeing here is trying to take the last trends of the few years from these large language models into actions and into decisions to be made for us. And I'm all for social good, so I would echo just about everything that has been said here and add, for me personally, like, I'm really excited for deeper medical insights. I think still to this day, the best paper I saw last year was one where some neuroscientists played Pink Floyd while patients had BCI, brain-computer interfaces, EEGs, attached to their skull, and later they were able to predict what they were listening to from the brainwave scans. So like, think about that from like a locked-in syndrome. There's huge implications there.
I'm gonna get some steps. Okay. So, any questions before we move on to the next one? Yes, sir.
Well, what is an agent?
What is an agent? Who wants to break that one down? Of course, we're gonna hear the story and as she's sitting. Okay.
So there's a range of ways we could answer that question, from very technical to, let's go with, okay, so everyone here has used ChatGPT, right? That's a safe ground for us to kind of put this in. So when you prompt, right, there's a lot of different prompting methods. Some are more conversational. But if you're really drilling into a good prompt with any sort of large language model, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I need you to act as X, and I need you to follow these instructions, and this is what I want at the output. So a lot of the agentic models that we're seeing are actually like fancy prompting on models that are already existing. A lot of code scripts that say, hey, these are very deep instructions on who you are, what we need from you, what you're supposed to be, what your context is, what your knowledge is, what kind of databases you have access to. And this is specifically what I need to be output. And there's a lot of different ways from software to make that happen, but it's basically taking that, understanding that large language model and making it very specific for a use case and having a fine set of instructions so that it performs a certain task.
Did that answer your question?
Sort of, but I mean, I kind of understand it, but I'm not.
Can I do a quick, okay. So you give AI a role, and then you task it, and then you actually have a team of different AI agents that have different roles. So in your case, what type of business do you have?
I'm a writer.
You're a writer, fantastic. Okay, so
Well,
you
I'll be
may,
extinct in 5 years.
I wouldn't go that far. But you may have an agent that functions as a researcher. You say, you're a researcher, go on the internet and find me XYZ on this subject matter. Then you would make a different agent whose responsibility would be maybe to take that information and distill it. So they go from your researcher to your data analyst. So essentially you would have a team of different pieces of AI doing different roles that you assign it, and then that gives you information back. Does that make sense? So you're basically passing that data from one to another. Okay. Am I good over here? Okay. I'm gonna check in with the SMEs when I feel like I'm out on the ledge. Okay, so what areas should society be concerned about AI adoption, and how do we assess the societal impact? Who wants to take that one? Any of you can.
So, this is my answer. The ethics and the governance of how AI is applied. And the reason I say that is because human beings don't like change. And so even though the technology may be very far advanced, like we were talking about, a lot of this stuff has been around for decades, right? It just hasn't been used the way that we're using it currently. But when you think about governance, right, think about the government and all the great things that are happening, right? How efficient is the government at making laws and regulating things, right? So the technology is advancing at a pace that even the experts can't keep up with, right? And you know that the law, it has to sit for this many days, then it has to go to this committee, then it has to go to this, right? So if you have these processes in place where your technology is far outpacing your ability to regulate it, you're going to have tons of problems regardless of whatever industry it is. So the ethics behind it, how it's being used, because you don't want nefarious actors, but governing, right? Understanding what it can be used for, what it can't be used for, right? You don't want to think you're talking to a person and you're talking to an AI and something goes wrong, right? Because you can hold a person accountable, but who do you hold accountable for an AI, right? When you have a team of software developers and a company, so these are the things that we have to think about that haven't been applied in the law yet.
Yeah, one question here, how many people think in the next 3 years AI is going to do more harm than good to society? So more harm, how many people think more harm? Okay, how many people think better, do better good? Okay, great. Actually, I was giving a talk to a group, it's called Policymakers and Provocateurs, and only about 20% or even 5% used AI. And so it was totally different. I mean, we had a debate on this, and they all are fearful of AI. I just looked actually at Pew Research came out, and like 81% of people do not use AI in the workforce, or they don't even know what AI is in the workforce. So this is very new, and like I worked at Motorola and Nokia for 33 years, and that was new, but it took 20 to 30 years before the cell phone and the smartphones came out, and now everyone has a smartphone. We're going to have AI in the next 5 years. And so my biggest concern about AI is that does everyone is able to use it and leverage it to solve their problems? And the concern is that there's going to be the haves and the have-nots, or those who don't embrace it and those who are fearful of it. And then the question is, what could go wrong? Cybersecurity, you know, the more powerful the tool, the more dangerous the tool. I worked for 4 years in autonomous vehicle technology. More people are actually dying, even though our cars are getting smarter, because people are getting dumber. So the question is, and more distracted, speeding, and so forth. So, you know, the question is and this goes back to agency, at my final point, is agency is whenever you act. So for me, you know, as I'm driving, I have agency. If I give it to my teenage son, he has agency on the car. If I give it to the AI and have Tesla driving it, AI is doing the agency. So whoever's acting on either yourself or on your behalf. And the question is when will the AI be ready to be safe and effective? And that's going to be the challenge over the next 3 years.
Do you want me to keep passing, or do you want to move on?
Whatever you wanna do.
Okay. I just want to add a couple of things. I think probably my biggest concern is more broadly. I think that we have the assumption that it is made for all, and it's actually like created in unity and equity and justice. But I think as we've seen with any piece of technology that we've implemented, it's usually created by a very specific group of people, and it's not being used on those same folks. So I have a bigger concern that we're not doing our due diligence to understand how these things are created, and that we might just be a little bit too excited to turn them on. But I also know that there's a balance in being able to use the tools so then that we can learn. But I think going to Doug's point, that it may not really be accessible to everyone. So then how do we make that happen? So I think we're just running with the assumption that it is made for all. And I'm concerned about that.
I'll come to you. This is a good question, fascinating question. A couple things. One, we're talking about AI, what AI will do, all these just different things, but really when we like peel back everything, these are really human questions. Has nothing to do with AI. AI is a hammer, it is a tool, it is nothing more than that. So the question really is about what is the responsibility of humans? Again, you know, humans are the ones that's building it. The data that trains AI comes from historical facts that humans create. And there's biases, there's misinformation, there's all these just different things. And then, you know, something that's been talked about quite frequently and something I also believe in is, you know, we talk a lot about ethics. Well, ethics is really, it's a moving target depending on who you ask. My morals may not be the same as another person's, right? So when we start thinking about from an ethical standpoint, that becomes extremely subjective, or it has the potential to be subjective. So really what we should be talking about is the safety aspect. Is it safe to allow a AI to operate a 3-ton vehicle and you're not, you know, in control? We talk a lot about humans in the loop or humans on the edge of the loop where things are kind of going. So I think it's important to really take into consideration the real crux of this question is really about humanity. Have we evolved? I don't know. Depending on who you ask. If we look at events around the world, we're still dealing with the same shit we've been dealing with for generations now. So that's just my take on it.
An AI model or a program can do really well at a specific thing, in a specific scenario. So what's that next thing? What's that thing where AI starts getting smarter than humans? Well, AGI is where we say an AI model can do just about anything, artificial general intelligence. It can do just about anything, at least as well as a human, in some cases better. And then we get to ASI, which is artificial superintelligence, and that is where we're all screwed. And we're not even at AGI right now. So last year, OpenAI tried to put a benchmark and said, we'll reach AGI when we hit this profit margin. So that's not even on the technology's capabilities. They made a deal with Microsoft that said, hey, when we hit AGI, we think it's going to be X billion dollars, then this thing is going to happen. We're not there yet. We're just not. There are things that, yes, it can do better than a human. I will revisit this conversation in true, effort when a robot can teach a toddler how to tie their shoes. Circle back to me then, and then we can talk about it, because then you're dealing with understanding the physical realm, right? Understanding emotions, understanding the difference between an adult and a child, and then understanding how to teach and how to adapt your method of teaching depending on who is on the receiving end. So that's my little disclaimer on AGI. And the question was something about public trust. I know I wrote this question, but it was
Actually, you answered. You did answer it, actually.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. You led with an answer and then you hit the AG. It worked out.
Lewis, over to you.
I forgot the question, honestly. What was the question?
What are the biggest gaps between how AI is marketed and how it's actually experienced? She actually did nail that part.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't think I have much to add to that outside. I would just say this, from working in advertising and marketing for many years in branding, companies like to make things look way sexier than they actually are. So it's just, that's the nature of it, and it's really not that complicated. So that's just the 2 cents I would add to it.
I was just going to add that I do think Michelle nailed it. And then I think too that we still have a gap in people understanding the context in which AI can be leveraged and maybe when it doesn't need to be leveraged. So kind of knowing, the risk and opportunity of any given tool, that you're using. And I think that we don't really have that in the marketing of tools. And I think that's a really important component of trust.
Yeah, and I'll add, agents, one of the biggest problems, and they did a number of studies on this, is they don't have common sense. So, AI can answer great questions, right? It scores better than a PhD student, professor, right? So they're very smart, but they have zero common sense. So think of the smartest teenager that doesn't have any common sense, and how much danger that can cause. So that is the biggest problem with AI, is they're very smart, no common sense. The other thing is they go through different processes. Like if you look at your workflows, how do I fix it? How do I solve a problem? At the end of the day, it's not I can't get it 100% on a question error, is can I solve a problem? And that's the biggest problem that AI, they're smart, but they can't solve problems. So that's the question is, when will they be able to solve problems like energy, healthcare, and other areas, education?
I'll just add that when we sensationalize terms, right? So now we have the term AI, and it can sometimes invoke curiosity or fear, but because we haven't used that language before, even though we've used the technology before, right? So it's been around, people have been using it, but now that it's being marketed, it's like, oh, I'll never use this thing, but you're using it every day in your car, in your phone, So really understanding what marketing is about. It's about selling things and selling ideas and influencing people's thoughts. So just taking that step back and realizing that we need to understand it before we place judgment on any parts of it.
I think that gentleman there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a question. I want to get your guys' thoughts on just around the ethics, as you guys have talked about. The major players in the market, OpenAI, the Googles, Anthropics, they are building these models by scraping all the data on the internet, okay? And yet we're sitting here, and they're infringing on copyright. Yet we're sitting here talking about ethics and governance. How would you recommend agents aren't smart? Well, the way you get it to be smart is to train a specific model on whatever that use case is. How would you guys consult on these business ethics and integrating it into a new business practice, as scraping data, for example, is a new business operation to somebody, because that is the way that you're going to build your own model. So how do you, as you're working with organizations and what your experience has been, how are you shaping the minds and communicating this to businesses and operations of, hey, this is, you know, really a new paradigm shift, which comes with maybe changing your ethics?
So I'm going to break that out into two questions, okay? So part of it is we need information, right? AI models need data, they need information in order to get better. A call out I'll make is there's a difference between data and information. Okay, we can make data out of anything. There's a correlation, a strong correlation between ice cream and shark attacks. It's true. Why? Summertime. So you can take any 2 points and you can draw a line between them, but there might not be meaning there. And if you just dump a bunch of data, you're gonna make ineffective noise, right? So what we really need is we need useful information, we need useful data. And also, copyright is a huge issue, and it has been for years. If you look at some of the visual models, right, Stable Diffusion has been in big trouble for the last few years because they had artist signatures that popped up in some of the images because they scraped it all. They're not the only ones doing that. Clearview AI, which is used by almost every police force in the US, still a private company, by the way, owned by an Australian, he scraped all facial data that was publicly available, including Venmo, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere he could get a face and a name, put that together, and it's being used in security, in policing. Okay, so this isn't just about OpenAI, it's not just about Anthropic, it's really what we're looking at is a lack of regulation. And we're kind of now the Pandora's box has been opened, so what do you do? In these states, we don't have GDPR that says, hey, I have a right to know who has my information, I have a right to be forgotten, I want you to forget me. We have none of those mechanisms in the states, so this is very much Wild West. And that's going to be a difference between companies and company values. And I think as consumers, then we have to decide who do we work with, who gives our money, what products do we use.
That's a lot of questions. Well, real quick, I just want to add on to that. I agree 100%, Michelle. I think it comes down really to, again, responsible innovation, right? Is how are you being responsible? I believe part of your question was, I'll read it, does it say Tommy?
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow,
I
you
see.
got good at
I got plural. Yeah. So I think, you know, this is where responsible innovation comes in. So many companies, and it kind of gets back to the point I was making earlier. These are human questions that we're really asking, right? Our humanity. Are we going to be responsible? Are you going to pay people? If I'm an artist, because I'm an artist as well, if I post something on social media, is whatever company going to scrape my information? Are they going to give me credit? Are they going to monetize and pay me for it? That would be a different conversation. That creates another opportunity for artists to potentially make additional revenue stream if you're going to be using my images as a form to train your AIs. Pay me. But as we know, when things hit the internet, I mean, it becomes extremely dangerous. But to Michelle's point, we are lacking the regulations. We're well behind some of the other leading countries in terms of regulations and having rules and governance. And honestly, I think it's going to get worse with how things are kind of going politically right now. You know, not to get into the weeds there, but with all the deregulations, we're going to have additional issues. So that being said, if I'm consulting with a company and let's say they're trying to build something new, it really comes down to transparency and understanding where are you getting the information from. If we're using a AI to help build whatever application, well, let's have the conversation and understand where it's coming from and be prepared for that. In case you do run into a situation where somebody says, you stole my shit, so I'm going to sue you. Do you have a mechanism in place to help mitigate risk and things like that? So that's my thought. Person, there's a ton of hands flying in the air. I'm getting nervous, so.
I was just going to add specifically, kind of to your question of how can we maybe practically help organizations. So at the center, we support healthcare organizations specifically. So we stay in that lane and try to stay in my lane as much as possible. But specifically, we do ask some of the questions that were already brought up by the panelists, but we really start to have them understand what are the things that you're going to put in place. What is your vision for AI? What are your values? What are your principles? And what does that look like? It might look like from a developer standpoint that you are scraping data. Maybe you're using data that you purchased. Maybe you have it already because of your electronic health record and you get to have it because you bought that. Analytics companies, right? So you're getting all of that. You have patient data that's consented and given to you for specific things. So you may have all of that, but you have to decide now, and I think it's a really good time for organizations to start to bring those things into not only policy, but into practice, so that everyone is on board with, like, provider knows, okay, I'm using this AI tool and I'm using it for X, and here is how it's made. And I can talk to the patient about that. The patient knows when they walk in that this is what they can expect from this particular healthcare organization. But now is the time for these organizations to start saying, we have to get in front of, and we have to have like actual practical transparency, not just say, we're transparent, but really like put those things like, here is why we value AI. Here's why we use advanced technology. We should have probably done it when we brought devices into healthcare. And so now I think is a good time to start to write those policies and put them into practice, and I think be able to couple them with things that already exist in risk management, in cybersecurity, in patient safety, and we can attach those things into it, and I think that can really provide something practical. At least that's advice we give in the community.
Real quick. I'm a consultant to the AI Partners that does European Union AI risk assessment. So there's fines right now, so unacceptable use of AI is 7%, and then there's high-risk areas. So making sure that you do a risk assessment, so making sure as you're using these AI tools that you understand the risk of using them for liability, violating copyright, and so forth is what I would recommend. So just like you have a cybersecurity expert in your company, have an AI risk assessment person, or hire someone like AI Partners. And my only last comment would be, like you say, well, that's going in Europe, but like California, Colorado, Massachusetts, they're passing laws at the state level. And so if you're out here, you're going to have to do this, and eventually it will go into the federal level, probably in the next 2 to 3 years. So get your risk assessment done so you know how to use AI properly.
Okay, so now we have a lot of questions. So here's how we're going to do this. You can ask your question. Long diatribes are not welcome because we have a lot of questions, and I want to make sure we get through as many of them as possible. I also have questions here, but I want to give respect to your questions. So if you can, keep your question down to like 30 seconds, so then we can get the panel to answer and we can get most of the questions answered. Is that cool? Yes. All right, so raise your hands if you have a question. All right, I think Rich has the next question, and then I'll go front to back. Cool? Hey, Rich.
Yeah,
30 seconds, Rich. Okay.
So, one of the things I wanted to ask you guys, my background's in the blockchain cryptocurrency space. You guys are talking about a lot of open source technology and ownership. But this is more rooted in the value side of things. What is value in the digital age? As the sir here mentioned, as a writer, he sees that he might be going away. But what is the conversation on value when it comes to expertise and things like that when we start discussing agents and whatnot? So what is value in the digital age, and how do we start having a discussion on that?
What is value now? It's it's not a smart ass question, but it really is. I think it comes down to, if we look throughout history, there's always been advancements in tools. You go back 5,000 plus years ago, you had this thing that came along, people was like writing, Bibles by hand, and they was really good at it. Then somebody said, I got a printing press. Well, that changed the game, right? But that doesn't mean that there's not value in still being able to do something by hand. So for me, the way I think about it is that AI, and really any emerging tool, it really comes down to understanding how can you leverage it, right? How do you leverage it? How does it make you better? This is why, again, I tend to like to use the language augmented intelligence. How can it make you better? If I am a writer, because I'm a writer, maybe I cannot afford to hire an editor. But if I write my manuscript, I write everything out, and I say, hey, help me edit this. And it can do it better than Grammarly, possibly, you know, that uses AI and different things now. But my point is, I think that we should be striving for freedom in terms of how can we become more creative? How can we think about solving real problems and allow that to become our value mechanism? Again, kind of get back to a point earlier about critical thinking, right? Well, critical thinking, now, it used to be when I was in college back in 2003, you had to do some coding, you had to type things, and granted, you still have to do coding, but now, if I can leverage one of the AI tools to help generate code, well, I can think about, well, how can I really build something that's valuable, right? Now I have to say, what is the problem that I'm solving? And it gets back to, again, critical thinking. And to me, that's where our true potential as humans are. How do we think? What are we solving in the world? And I can turn that and monetize that and make value out of that. So that's just my thought.
So technology advances at the pace of the market, not at the pace of the science, right? So think about it in a way that microchips and the phones that we have, right? You're not going to get the most advanced microchip as soon as that microchip is available, right? The company's going to give you a model, and they're going to market it, and they're going to say, hey, we got a brand new model next year, and they're going to market that one, and it's not going to be the fastest one that they have possible, right? So when we talk about value, it's what are people willing to pay for, right? Typically. So technology always advances at the pace of the market, right? So when we talk about medical solutions, right, it would take years to come up with some of these vaccines because it's about how much money is being invested in the research, right? But when we had a pandemic, we're coming up with vaccines in record time compared to decades prior, right? Think about World War II. The US was rolling out battleships in about 30 days, right? You know how long it takes to build a ship now? It's at least 30 years, right? But that's because the need is different, right? The market is different, right? We don't need a bunch of battleships, right? But we have a bunch of companies that want to drag out the process, right? So value is based on what we decide and what the market decides. That's how stocks work. So the markets are going to, whatever the commodity or product is, the market is going to dictate that. So I think to the point before, right, I don't think writing is going to go away at all, right? I think we're going to get more creativity, right? Because look at what's happening with videos, right? We got so many content options now, right? And even with music, there's way more music on Spotify that is just untapped, completely untouched, right? So instead of writing 2 or 3 great novels in your lifetime, you're writing 2 or 3 great novels every year, right? And so that's where I see the value in that. But then what does that translate to for the folks that are consuming that information or those products?
I'm going to do a little play on words here and tell you a story. So we have value, right, as in benefit, okay? Or maybe what it does for us as consumers, maybe from a company standpoint, right, how much money we can make off this. But we also have values as in ethics, as in morals, okay? And if we're looking at the regulatory landscape, a company, so there's a battle, which maybe we'll later talk about value, I have no problem here. But there's a battle, right, between 2 different values on 2 different ends of spectrums, where you have a real point on each one. And so a lot of times with regulation, the opposite argument is, well, that's going to hinder innovation. And then it's up to the company developing a product to decide where they go on this scale. And they have a baseline, right, to do what must they do? What is the very minimum baseline of what this product has to do? So we're all Americans, so we probably use text messages, right? Does anyone use WhatsApp? What about Signal? So these are two messaging platforms, and if you go over to Europe or you have friends in Europe, they're probably not going to text you. They're going to say either get on WhatsApp or get on Signal. Now WhatsApp came first, Signal came later. They do the same thing. They even do the same thing that iMessage does. But there is a huge difference in terms of customer dedication to each of these platforms, each of these companies. And Signal has a much higher dedicated user base. Why? Because WhatsApp decided we're going to go the baseline. It's secure. It's probably safer than iMessage, honestly. But they did the baseline privacy requirements for GDPR. You know, what are we going to do to protect? What do we have to do? Signal said we're going to take the regulation and we're going to innovate on it. And we're going to make this our value and do the most that we possibly can to protect your messaging app. And the consumers love that. So there is also value in saying this is our value, our moral, our belief, and we are going to push innovation towards regulation. And so it comes down to a company standpoint of what are you going to do? What are you going to stand on?
Okay, sorry, I got to call an audible out of respect because I believe some of the hands in the back of the room were up first. So, gentleman right here with the cool beard, 30 seconds, and then we'll work our way back to the front. All right, yes, sir.
Thank you for that. Multiple of you have suggested that there's a have-nots kind of dichotomy. There's a businesses and schools and infrastructure isn't going towards AI as fast as it could be. Is there a possible way that we could implement, and what would that look like, a on-ramp per se, to get into AI and get more people faster, more readily available to use AI?
Okay, let's do two panelists to answer, and then I'll bounce back to the group. Okay, cool?
Yeah, real quick, there's 5.7 billion people that have smartphones right now. If you have a smartphone, you can get AI for free for ChatGPT to use, Perplexity for free, you can do deep research. So I'm less concerned about people not being able to use it because they don't have affordability. I'm more concerned that they're not having the readiness or the relevance in their lives to use it. So I think it's education.
That's what I'm trying to get to. How do you get them to be the readiness and willingness?
Well, that's what these groups are all about, that we help show that, and people around the world how to show how to use it.
I think to one of the earlier questions, right? If we're more proactive and we take a step towards this technology instead of retreating from it, that's where you're going to get your educational value, right? So when we're in the classroom, instead of sticking to this is the curriculum, we have to do it this way, everybody's going to do the same lesson all at the same time, if you're leveraging the technology to reduce the inefficiencies, right, you're going to find a lot more ways to move forward. The other piece of that is that you're able to, I say war game, you're able to look at a lot of scenarios if you're leaning into the technology as opposed to waiting and reacting to things that may or may not happen, right?
Real quick first, let me get it real fast. 2 seconds. I don't think my man's answered. So check it out. To me, I think it's very simple. You gotta just make it an everyday thing. It means you do not lead with, here's our AI. You just make the thing exist. Think about your ATM card. Back in the day, you know, people, they carried cash, they wrote checks, and then somewhere along the way, there was this debit card, right? It just became a part of your day-to-day. So for me, I think that the way to answer your question, to on-ramp things, is you have to just pull back and stop leaning into the techie jargon as much. Still have your regulations in place, but just make it a part of your day-to-day life. Again, don't build it and say, here's an AI tool. Just say, here's a tool that's gonna make your work more efficient, and people will adopt it. Hopefully.
Okay, hold on. This gentleman here in the black shirt.
So, for the optimists, are there any policies, regulations, or changes that you hope to manage AI, even if the root of the problem is not based on AI? GDPR, for example, being a privacy aspect. In California, as you did mention, Physicians Make Decisions Act in California will require any denial, delay, or modification of healthcare services to be reviewed by a healthcare provider with relevant experience. That's something we needed even before AI was a factor. The mass denial from United Healthcare, for example, many things helped to prompt that, but that was a root problem before. Anything out there that you guys are excited for that's on the horizon?
I can tell when you lean forward, you have an answer.
You said the optimists?
I'm hoping.
Yeah, I feel like you should have the mic.
I mean, you said you're a pragmatic optimist.
Yeah, there you go, you should say it.
Pragmatic meaning I believe in the power, should it be well governed and should it be governed in a proactive manner. And this little thing happened on January 21st,
Yes.
in which all effort towards federal regulation went out the window. And I will say, without trying to, I don't want anyone to tap the sign here, but the political sign, I'm trying not to get it tapped up, the anti-words over here. I'm sitting over. So there's 2 open public comments right now, by the way, if anybody likes policy writing. They're both due on March 15th. One is from the AI Safety Institute, one's for the White House, and they're looking for public comments on AI, how they should think about regulation going forward. I'm not going to insert my personal opinion on where I think that's going to go, which is wait a few years. And it's difficult because there's also a list of banned words, which means if your public comment has any of these banned words, I'm starting to tap the sign, aren't I? It's going to be hard, is my point. And the other problem that we're going to run into is this fragmented patchwork landscape of laws, and that's going to be really difficult for companies because it means you have to self-regulate. And then as consumers, you're going to be navigating, well, this person does this, this does this. I'm stoked about the EU AI Act. I was stoked about the executive order that we had. I think it's going to be up to the states, and you know, we've got to start somewhere. Maybe we should get to where Europe was 5 years ago. Start there.
I hear you. I was just hoping for a silver lining.
You did say optimist.
I know,
wasn't the
I know.
person.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump on the optimist bandwagon, and I think the people generally will always rise to the occasion. So think about inequities that have existed in this country for generations, right? With the advent of smartphones and more so the cameras and the video capability of all of the pieces of technology that have that, a lot of things were brought to light and a lot of laws have changed because people brought them to light, right? And so even if we have slow regulation and mismatches, people will always figure out a way to make things happen, right? So, you know, the students that figure out how to hack their test, right? We're gonna figure it out, right? So even if there's negative things that we think are happening, there's always somebody there that's gonna say, hey, this is the right thing, or shed a light on the things that are being used against us in that sense.
Okay, yes, ma'am?
Hi, I have 2 questions for you.
Hey.
Okay, it's twofold.
What's up?
The first question is, how has AI changed your day-to-day life from last year to this year? Because it's evolving so so quickly. And then secondly, which AI are you using to get the results that you really like? Because ChatGPT is obviously there. You can get second tier or third tier of it. And what do you prefer?
Solid AD question. Okay.
I wrote 2 books last year with a doctor and using AI, so I would never have been able to do that without that. Deep research right now, using that, so if you need to do research, AI, there's Perplexities for free, you can do 5. So I highly recommend that. So Perplexity, OpenAI is the tools I use, but I use a bunch of them.
I'm gonna get real consumer and like mom life. And I wouldn't even really categorize these as like advanced. I think it kind of goes back to Michelle's points. But I love it when Uber Eats like remembers what I ordered last time and I can order that quickly again. I love that. And then I also use a lot of like the prompts and recommendations in my text messaging and also in my email. Like those are very basic things that get me through my day, and I feel pretty good about those.
All right, last 2 questions. Just gentleman and the gentleman in the red, okay? And then there'll be time after for everyone to kind of get together. 30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
So what tools do we have that AI tools we have to analyze the risk? Like IBM just last month published their risk atlas, and they also published a model to do the risk analysis. What other tools exist that we can use as developers and practitioners of AI?
You shouldn't have a tail, I'm sorry.
Right.
Don't ever play poker with me. Or do, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll lose. Okay, so there's actually a ton of AI governance tools that are coming about right now. One that has really caught my attention in the last 18 months is called Credo, C-R-E-D-O. They're doing really a lot of great work in AI governance. One of the tricky things, so we're talking, Lewis said it perfectly earlier, like ethics are kind of subjective sometimes, right? Like if you take the trolley problem, for example, you're gonna have people answer it in a myriad of different ways depending on their values. So how do you make that quantifiable? Like how do you quantify fairness, for example? How do you decide if an algorithm is fairly treating 2 individuals or 2 groups of people? Fairness has almost 30 different mathematical definitions now. And that's just one avenue. So it's kind of tailored to your use case. Like everyone hates this answer, but the answer is it depends. NIST has a lot of really great frameworks from fairness, bias mitigation to human-centric design. They're really, I would say, leading a lot of charges. Microsoft's responsible AI. I'm also Microsoft MVP, so I have to raise the roof there a little bit, but they also have a wonderful suite of tools, and I think most of the big companies are leaning that way.
Thank you.
Gentleman there.
As it relates to the European Union AI Act, what are 2 of the best things that you've seen out of that you would like to have brought to the United States? Michelle.
Sorry, Michelle.
She tried so hard.
Yeah, he did actually direct that.
He was looking right at you.
A lot of things. The EU AI Act is huge, and I'm actively studying it right now, so it's top of mind. But I will also, I'm going to call out that there's a blend between the EU AI Act, which is specific to AI, right? And then GDPR, Global Data Protection Rights. And so you kind of do this throughout. GDPR to me has some of the most incredible consumer protection levels. Is my data being used? Has my data been collected? Please forgive me. Like those are some of the most important things from GDPR. Now, EU AI Act does a really great job of classifying what is high-risk AI. Where is AI being used in applications that directly impact human lives? Healthcare, insurance, credit lending, policing. I won't even get started on the AI recidivism problem that we have in the States, but that's explicitly called out in the EU AI Act. There is bans on certain things. There's bans on AI in warfare, for example, in certain use cases. There are different sectors that just say, hey, no, don't do that. Or if you do that, you must do these different things. There must be a third-party auditor if you're doing this thing in this field. And so there's a lot of just protection that we don't currently have.
add a couple, two points. One is, so it gives you a risk assessment, right? What is the process you need to follow to make sure you're understanding your risks, and so you mitigate those risks? That would be one. And the other thing, what we're doing right here is AI literacy. It encourages AI literacy, so every employee, right now, only like 7% of employees are really using AI daily, and so they're not getting the benefit. So how do you use AI literacy appropriate so everyone can have the benefits of AI? So I applaud everyone here to learn more about AI, and hope that's one of the things the EUAI can help with.
Okay, so with respect to the time, we do have to wrap right now. Give the panelists a round of applause. Before we close out, I have a couple of questions. One, are there any attorneys in the room? Can you raise your hand? Any attorneys? Okay, we got one. Okay, someone needs to partner with this gentleman to try and figure that part out. And then I'll close out here. Everyone who was in here who heard the advice of the people on the panel is now a steward of this information. The question has been asked many times, how do we actually get this information out? I think a lot of times we rely on a bunch of other people to do it for us, and you are also a resource now. So don't think that because you don't have all the knowledge that all these brilliant people have, that you cannot go and advise someone on things that you've heard. They gave great definitions, they gave great words, they gave great software to look up. You're now a steward of that. So take that back to each respective community that you're in, and you become now an access point, and we can actually become better informed as a community as to how to utilize AI. Does that sound cool? All right, thank you guys.
Follow them on LinkedIn, right? I mean, each one of these people are throwing fire. They're throwing use cases. I mean, Doug writes an encyclopedia every day full of great information. So I just want to say thank you again to the panelists.